Economic downturn, followed by even more economic downturn.
Around a quarter of the population left without a job.
One of the biggest stock market crashes in world history.
Overgrazing brings the secondary travesty, which is the Dust Bowl.
All covered in this month's episode of The Past Experience. Welcome to the Great Depression.
Great Depression did not just affect those who were already on the borderline of poverty. In fact, many high-class citizens and gold-collar workers fell victim to the jaws of economic depression.
Humiliation suffocatingly coated a population that had spent the last decade splurging and living above their means. Stripped from their homes and thrust into the urchin life.
Plenty found themselves banding together under the facade of a town named after the man the people blamed, President Hoover. Sit back with a scoop of Hoover stew, thinking that Hoover would stow this stew in his loo. Hoover stew, to many people in the 20s, is the last thing they would expect to be eating in such a prosperous time. But now, Hoover stew is the only good in this era. And people would be eating Hoover stews in Hoovervilles, in Hoover's world. As a result of the Great Depression, 15,000 Americans resided in Hoovervilles, with some of the biggest being in St. Louis.
Hoovervilles were civilized communities of shacks.
Americans essentially became refugees within their own nation. Some would succumb to the cold touch of death. There was no insurance, nor filing for unemployment, so what you had in your pocket was what you had, and the government wouldn't aid you. In the pastime, however, people treated themselves with bootlegged alcohol and whiskey, along with a good gamble at the casino. These fun times, however, didn't cover up the true scope of the matter. America was on its last leg. Black Tuesday, to many, was considered the beginning of the Great Depression. It describes a gargantuan stock market crash on Wall Street, the biggest crash in U.S. history. Hundreds of people crowded at Wall Street, but for what reason?
After looking at these people's economic status, we know why.
It turns out these citizens were buying on the margins, where they would buy a fraction of a stock, wait for it to rise, then pay it later.
But the stocks fell, causing the public to descend into debt and sell their stocks to salvage what they could, which resulted in this humongous crowd. But this brings up another question. Why did the stocks fall? The country was prosperous. What happened? Well, it all stems back to the products being made.
I could forget those happy yesteryears that have left a rosary of tears. Rosary of tears, baby, oh Lord. Your face beams in my dreams. In spite of all I do, oh baby, everything seems to ring. Memories of you.
Production outpaces purchase rate. The common amenities of the 20s were single purchase luxuries. Once most families had purchased these luxuries,
Often bought on credit through the brand new buy now, pay later system.
they typically did not need to repurchase the item. This did not stop corporations, however, who continued to rapidly produce products. As supply increased,
And demand dropped.
companies' growth was cut, leaving everyone who bought on the margins without the newfound funds to fully purchase the stock. People committed mass bank runs, which led to the closing of thousands of banks.
Even worse, Hoover signed the Smoot-Hawley tariff. a tariff that, originally, was going to protect American farmers from foreign competition, but ended up resulting in other countries' economies degrading and enforcing tariffs on American goods. A chain reaction ensued, leaving about 25% of the population unemployed. This was the straw that broke the camel's back and kick-started the Great Depression. Hello, and welcome to the future. For the Noodle Noggin Wayfinder, Fettuccine Pro Max Plus 16 is in shipping.
Brought to you by Sophmo Sciences.
Enjoy all your favorite intelligence prejudices with just a click of a button. Now with priorities, regrets, confidence levels, and most importantly, their actual height. Buy now.
Use code PASTXP, PASTXP, to get 15% off. And the first 500 users of this code will be put into a drawing pool to earn a limited edition Sapphire Blue Noodle Noggin Wayfinder Fettuccine Pro Max Plus 16.
As if conditions in the Great Plains couldn't get any more barren, the Dust Bowl swept in, engulfing most of the Great Plains into a seemingly never-ending dust storm. You could never escape. It's in your eyes, your mouth, inside of your fingernails. Every time you eat, you're eating dust. Every time you breathe, you're breathing dust. Every time you take a step, you're stepping on dust. Sometimes the dust was just too much, and houses would implode, and inhabitants weren't so lucky. The Great Plains were nearly uninhabitable, and even today, the Dust Bowl remains the worst man-made ecological disaster in U.S. history. Note how I said man-made.
Yes. Yes, that is right. Dust Bowl was the supreme product of overcultivation, wrought by the accelerated production that World War I required. The problem was, this farming rate never slowed down to normalcy. The soil was ruined and tattered to the point of dust. This dust was easily picked up by the uninterrupted Great Plains winds. Farmers had enlarged the crop supply until the price bubble popped. The price for many crops fell to the point of farmers having to grow even more, further perpetuating the dust. Veterans wanted a slice of the government's pie after a long-awaited promise to pay the World War I veterans in compensation for their duty. However, when the Great Depression struck, veterans wanted their money now, and Hoover wouldn't budge. Camps of veterans would sleep in close proximity to the White House protest.
Eventually, Bonus Army was dispersed by command of President Hoover.
After a long decade of poverty-stricken America, the Great Depression finally came to a halt in 1939, thanks to Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. After winning the election by a landslide, Roosevelt managed to bring the citizens of America back on their feet and into the workplace once again. Later, at the end of the year, the Dust Bowl ended as well. In 1940, eradication programs enforced the destruction of all Hoovervilles, causing a vigorous debate on the rights of Hooverville members. And that wraps it up for this month's entry of the past experience. See you next time!